At the conclusion of The Return of the King, Gandalf the White, arguably the most powerful being remaining in Middle-earth following Sauron's defeat, makes an intriguing request. He expresses a desire to meet with Tom Bombadil, a figure whose enigmatic presence may rival even Gandalf's own. This moment raises a fascinating question. Why would Gandalf want to meet Tom Bombadil? Was it due to curiosity for Gandalf or something else, like fear of what Tom Bombadil could do? And what if Tom Bombadil was a threat? Could Gandalf have defeated him with his power as Gandalf the White? To answer that question, we first need to understand who Tom Bombadil is. Tom Bombadil, while shrouded in mystery, is depicted as possibly the oldest being in all of Middle-earth. His exact nature defies explanation. Even the wisest beings, such as Elrond and Gandalf, struggle to define what Tom truly is. Known to the elves as Eowyn Ben-Adar, oldest and fatherless, Tom appears to predate the very shaping of the world. He exists entirely outside the struggles of light and dark that define Middle-earth's history, content within his forested domain. However, some of Tom's history can be unraveled during his first appearance. Tom first appears when Merry and Pippin are trapped by Old Man Willow, not captured, but in hiding. Frodo and Sam cry for help. In response, Tom Bombadil arrives and, with a simple song, commands Old Man Willow to release them, effortlessly subduing the malevolent tree, showcasing only a sliver of his potential power. After accusing the hobbits, Tom Bombadil joyfully tells the hobbits to follow him to his home, mentioning how there would be time for questions at dinner. Without much alternative, the 4 hobbits follow him to his home. He graciously welcomes the hobbits into his home, where they meet Goldberry, Tom Bombadil's wife, also known as the River Daughter. It doesn't take long for the hobbits to settle in, and their weariness to fade, as Tom Bombadil sings and dances to entertain them, and provides them not only his warm home for shelter, but food too, and grand stories of the world that awe the hobbits. This was until Tom directly asks Frodo to show him the One Ring. His request shocks the hobbit, however. Surprisingly, his request seems innocent and devoid of malice. Frodo, perhaps sensing Tom's trustworthiness, obliges. He removes the ring and hands it to Tom. After taking the ring, Tom inspects and even puts it on, but he is completely unaffected by it. Unlike others, he does not become invisible, nor does he seem influenced by its power. Already a terrifying feat, but Tom doesn't stop there, causing the ring to disappear just for fun and with little to no effort. This causes Frodo to panic, fearing for where the ring could have gone. But Tom just as easily returns the ring and hands it back to Frodo with little thought or care. And like nothing happened. Tom continued his antics until it was time for the hobbits to move on. While Frodo and the hobbies enjoyed being with Tom, they needed to continue their journey, and with a warning from Tom, depart. But despite his warnings, the hobbits lasted little on their own, and were caught by Barrow Wight's extremely ancient and powerful undead spirits. It is then that Frodo remembers Tom's parting words and calls out to him for help. Miraculously, Tom answers once more, arriving with a powerful song that banishes the Barrow Wights and frees the hobbits from their icy grasp. After saving the hobbits, Tom decides to join them for a brief time, giving them protection. But despite the hobbits' pleas, he doesn't change his mind. Tom's country ends here. He will not pass the borders. Tom has his house to mind, and Goldberry is waiting. Tom mentions that he will not pass his country's borders, which could allude to some sort of physical or self-imposed barrier. Fortunately, the hobbits continue their journey without Tom, but they continue to wonder just who or what Tom Bombadil was. Unlike any being they have encountered, Tom's immunity to the One Ring, his effortless dismissal of powerful foes like Old Man Willow and the Barrow Wights, and his cryptic demeanor point to a deeper mystery. Is he a Maia, a being of Ardor itself, or something entirely different? While no concrete answer exists, the truth about Tom Bombadil may lie in the concept of beings more primordial than the Ainur themselves, enigmatic forces tied to the very fabric of Ardor. Like Ungoliant, the monstrous spider who defied even Morgoth, Tom's origin and nature seem to transcend the traditional categories of Maia, Valar, or any other known entities, and could be something more akin to a primordial of the world. Ungoliant, shrouded in mystery and terror, was described as a being of immense hunger and shadow, existing before the shaping of the world. Her origin remains unknown, and she did not align herself with the established powers of Arda, much like Tom Bombadil. Both characters operate outside the narrative's established framework of light versus darkness, making them enigmas in Tolkien's legendarium. Where Ungoliant devoured light and left devastation in her wake, Tom exists as a beacon of harmony and joy, untouched by the corruption or chaos of Middle-earth. Yet their similarities lie in their independence. They owe allegiance to no one, defy categorization, and embody powers that seem inherent to the world itself. Could Tom Bombadil be another such primordial force? While Ungoliant represents an insatiable void, Tom embodies balance and contentment. This nature could also explain his ability to ignore the One Ring's effects, as unlike Ungoliant, whose hunger drove her to destruction, Tom displays no desire for power, even when handling the One Ring. This lack of ambition sets him apart from every other being in Middle-earth. Even Gandalf, one of the mightiest Maia, feared the ring's corruptive influence. Yet in Tom's hands, it is no more than a trinket, incapable of bending him to its will or even holding his attention for long. This immunity, paired with his self-imposed boundaries, hints at a being so deeply rooted in the essence of Arda that no external force, whether Morgoth's malice, Sauron's will, or even the power of the Valar, can alter his nature. With that said, how powerful would that make Tom Bombadil? Tom Bombadil is often described as the eldest, predating even the Valar themselves. If this is true, he could be a primordial being, an embodiment of nature or Arda itself. Such an origin would grant him unimaginable strength, rooted not in military might or magical weapons, but in his intrinsic connection to the world. As the living essence of stability and harmony, Tom might represent an ancient and unyielding force that neither shadow nor light can influence. Though Tom has never been shown in combat, we can draw comparisons to his counterpart, Ungoliant. The ancient spider's feats offer a glimpse into the potential power of beings born from the primordial chaos. Ungoliant was so overwhelmingly powerful that she managed to confront and nearly defeat a weakened Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, forcing him to call for aid from his Balrogs. Even then, Ungoliant held her ground against multiple Balrogs at once, a feat that placed her at the level of the Maia and possibly even rivaled the strongest of the Valar. If Tom shares a similar primordial essence but represents balance rather than destruction, it's not a stretch to imagine that his power could equal, if not surpass, that of Ungoliant. His effortless control over Old Man Willow, the Barrow Wights, and the One Ring, all formidable in their own right, suggests a being whose strength transcends conventional measures. While he avoids violence and chaos, his presence hints at a reservoir of power so vast that it requires no demonstration. Enough to potentially rival Maia of his own, including the wise Gandalf. But to fully understand who Tom Bombadil is facing, it's crucial to explore Gandalf's past and the incredible powers he wields. Long before the creation of Arda, Iarlu Ilúvatar brought forth the Ainur, the first beings of his design. These divine spirits were divided into two groups: the Valar, the great powers of the world, and the Maia, their lesser but still immensely powerful counterparts. Among the Maia was Olorin, a being of profound wisdom and compassion. In later ages, this same Olorin would walk Middle-earth in a mortal guise and become known to its peoples as Gandalf the Grey. Olorin, like all the Ainur, participated in the music of the Ainur, the great symphony that shaped the blueprint of Arda itself. Even then, his spirit was marked by a unique gentleness and an understanding of the hearts of others, traits that would define his role in the world to come. As a Maia, he served under Manwë, Lord of the Valar, and Varda, the Queen of Stars, gaining great insight into the light and beauty of creation. But it was his connection to Nienna, the Lady of Mercy and Mourning, that truly shaped his character. From her, Olorin learned empathy, endurance, and the strength that comes from understanding sorrow. These teachings prepared him for the trials he would face in the world, as he became a guide and beacon of hope for the free peoples of Middle-earth during their darkest hours. When the Valar determined to send the Astari, or wizards, to Middle-earth to aid in the fight against Sauron, Olorin was chosen despite his initial reluctance. Disguised in a mortal form, he took the name Gandalf and journeyed into Middle-earth, where his wisdom and power would prove instrumental in the war against the Dark Lord. Yet, despite all his might, Gandalf remained humble, understanding that his role was not to dominate, but to inspire others to rise and resist the shadow. It was in Middle-earth that Gandalf began showcasing his powers, even with a restriction placed on him that barred some of his true strength as Gandalf the Grey. One of the most notable displays of his power occurred during the Battle of Weathertop. There, Gandalf faced all 9 of the Nazgûl, Sauron's most fearsome servants, who sought the One Ring. For an entire night, he fought against their dark power, wielding his staff and sword with unmatched skill and summoning flames and light to drive back their shadowy forms. But even this remarkable feat was not the most significant display of his power. That moment came in the depths of Khazad-dûm. In 3019 of the Third Age, Gandalf the Grey led the Fellowship of the Ring through the dark, labyrinthine halls of Moria. Their journey was fraught with danger, as the abandoned dwarf kingdom had long been overrun by orcs and other dark creatures. Yet nothing could prepare them for the terror that awaited them in the depths of the mines. Durin's Bane, a Balrog of Morgoth, a creature of flame and shadow that had slumbered beneath the mountains for centuries. When the Balrog was roused, its immense power and malevolence became clear. As the Fellowship fled across the bridge of Khazad-dûm, Gandalf took a stand. This was no ordinary foe. The Balrog was an ancient Maia spirit, akin to Gandalf in origin, but corrupted by Morgoth's dark influence. Knowing the danger it posed not only to the Fellowship, but to all of Middle-earth, Gandalf chose to confront it directly. On the narrow bridge, Gandalf faced the Balrog in one of the most iconic moments in Middle-earth's history. Raising his staff and sword, he uttered the famous command, "You shall not pass." With a mighty display of his power, Gandalf shattered the bridge beneath the Balrog, sending it plummeting into the abyss. Yet the beast's whip of fire lashed out, dragging Gandalf down with it. What followed was a battle unlike any other. Gandalf and the Balrog plunged into the depths, continuing their fight in the dark waters and up the endless staircases of Moria. Their clash lasted for days, culminating at the peak of Xiraxigil, where Gandalf finally vanquished the Balrog at the cost of his own life. After his passing, Gandalf was returned to Valinor, the land of the Valar, where his spirit was judged by the Ainur. Recognizing the dire state of Middle-earth and the growing shadow of Sauron, as well as the betrayal of Saruman, the Valar decided to send Gandalf back to Middle-earth. This time, however, he returned as Gandalf the White, free from many of the restrictions that had previously limited his powers. Gandalf the White wasted no time in demonstrating the extent of his newfound powers. His return marked a turning point in the War of the Ring, as he showcased abilities far surpassing those of his previous form. One of Gandalf's first acts as Gandalf the White was confronting Saruman, his fallen counterpart. Saruman had entrenched himself in Orthanc, surrounded by his army of orcs and his web of lies. Gandalf, now unyielding in his authority, confronted Saruman and broke his staff, showcasing how much Gandalf's powers had grown. But even now, Gandalf's true abilities didn't come from his raw power, but ability to inspire hope in others, as shown during the Battle of Helm's Deep, when Gandalf arrived at the break of dawn with Éomer and his cavalry, shattering Saruman's forces and becoming a beacon of hope for the beleaguered forces of Rohan. Another example of this is during the siege of Minas Tirith. As the forces of Sauron battered the White City, Gandalf stood firm, using his light to drive back the Nazgûl and rally the soldiers to defend their home. All the while, he was using his powers to help drive the terrifying and powerful Nazgûl back. This battle not only highlights Gandalf's physical might, but also his unparalleled ability to inspire others. Even while restricted as Gandalf the Grey, he was able to defeat Durin's Bane, a corrupted and twisted Maia of immense power. As Gandalf the White, unburdened by his restrictions, his strength would be even greater, and his ability to rally those around him unmatched. These qualities made Gandalf a force that few in Middle-earth could dare to challenge. But one figure stands out as a potential rival: Tom Bombadil. Could the master of the Old Forest, with his mysterious immunity to the One Ring and seemingly boundless power, truly match or even surpass Gandalf in strength? Given Gandalf's nature, he would likely never fight anyone who meant him no harm. But what if Tom Bombadil wasn't quite as good as he leads on and required someone to come stop him? In such a scenario, how would Gandalf fare against him? If Tom Bombadil were to turn into a threat requiring intervention, Gandalf would undoubtedly approach the conflict with caution and strategy. As Gandalf the White, he would possess incredible powers of both persuasion and combat, drawing upon his mastery of light, fire, and his ability to inspire allies to stand by him. However, Tom Bombadil is no ordinary foe. Tom's immunity to the One Ring and his apparent disregard for the powers that define Middle-earth hint at a being whose strength is deeply rooted in the essence of Arda itself. Unlike the Nazgûl or Durin's Bane, who operated within the frameworks of power and dominion, Tom exists outside these systems entirely. His power is seemingly untouchable, as seen when he effortlessly commanded Old Man Willow, banished the Barrow Wights, and dismissed the One Ring's influence as a mere curiosity. Gandalf's first step would likely be to gather allies capable of bolstering his efforts. Throughout Middle-earth's history, Gandalf has shown exceptional skill in uniting disparate forces for a common cause. For this confrontation, he might call upon the remnants of the Fellowship, seeking the strength of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Elves, such as Galadriel or Elrond, who understand the deeper mysteries of Middle-earth, could provide valuable insight into Tom Bombadil's nature. Even Radagast, the fellow Istari attuned to the natural world, could play a role in deciphering how to approach a being so connected to Arda itself. Gandalf's leadership would rally these allies, ensuring their unique strengths are brought to bear in a coordinated effort. Whether through diplomacy or force, Gandalf would form a coalition to address a challenge unlike any Middle-earth has seen. His next step would likely trying to understand the extent of Tom Bombadil's power and its limitations. Gandalf, being a master of knowledge, would study Tom's connection to the land and his apparent immunity to external forces. Rather than engaging directly in a brute force confrontation, Gandalf would seek to exploit any vulnerabilities, perhaps the limits of Tom's self-imposed boundaries, or his inability to act outside his domain. The strategy could involve luring Tom out of his territory, where his powers might weaken, or creating a situation where his natural inclination to preserve harmony could be used to contain him. Gandalf's ability to combine wisdom, subtlety, and sheer force would ensure he approached the confrontation with every advantage. While preparing for such an unprecedented confrontation, Gandalf might also consider seeking out powerful artifacts to enhance his strength or exploit any potential vulnerabilities in Tom Bombadil. Artifacts of great power have played a pivotal role in the history of Middle-earth, and Gandalf, as a being of immense wisdom, would undoubtedly recognize their value in such a scenario. One key consideration would be the loss of Narya, the Ring of Fire, one of the 3 elven rings that Gandalf bore during his time in Middle-earth. Narya was instrumental in bolstering Gandalf's power, allowing him to inspire courage, kindle hope, and amplify the effects of his staff in moments of great need. However, with the destruction of Sauron and the One Ring, Narya's power faded, leaving Gandalf without this significant source of strength. To compensate for the loss of Narya, Gandalf might seek a replacement artifact to augment his abilities. His vast knowledge of Middle-earth's lore would guide him to ancient relics imbued with power, such as weapons, talismans, or forgotten creations of the elves or dwarves. Only once Gandalf had done all of these would he consider facing Tom Bombadil. Given this strategy, Gandalf would have a good chance at success in the long term. But depending on just how powerful Tom really is, this strategy could turn into a long drawn-out war, like with Sauron, rather than just a simple battle, one where either side could potentially emerge victorious. That being said, what would Gandalf do if, during his meeting with Tom, he got attacked without any chance to prepare? Gandalf's meeting with Tom Bombadil would likely take place within Tom's domain, the Old Forest, a location where Tom's power is unmatched and deeply rooted. Tom's ability to command nature, combined with the inherent influence of his realm, would make him a formidable opponent on his own ground. The confrontation would ultimately depend on Tom Bombadil's true intentions and the limits of his power. If Tom's attack were driven by a momentary misunderstanding or a test of Gandalf's strength, the encounter might end in a truce, with Gandalf gaining valuable insights into Tom's nature. However, if Tom were to fully unleash his might, Gandalf's lack of preparation could leave him in a precarious position. Gandalf, while undoubtedly one of the most powerful beings in Middle-earth, would likely struggle to match Tom Bombadil in sheer power. From the perspective of Tom being a primordial force, he would be akin to Ungoliant, a being so overwhelmingly powerful that she could contend with Morgoth, the strongest of the Valar. Even as Gandalf the White, unshackled from the restrictions placed on him by the Valar, Gandalf's power, though formidable, simply wouldn't operate on the same level as Tom Bombadil's. In a confrontation, Gandalf's strengths in wisdom, strategy, and persuasion would likely come into play. He might manage to put up enough of a fight to use his powers of persuasion to de-escalate the situation, or, given Tom's well-documented reluctance to leave his territory, create an opening to flee. However, in a direct battle where neither could disengage, it's likely that Tom would defeat Gandalf without too much struggle. Tom's connection to the very fabric of Arda, his immunity to external influences like the One Ring, and his domain's inherent power would leave Gandalf outmatched. Even with his elevated status as Gandalf the White, his abilities would pale in comparison to the overwhelming force of a primordial being like Tom Bombadil. With that being said, it's unlikely these two iconic figures would ever have a reason to fight. Instead, it's far more probable they would share a great conversation, exchanging their vast knowledge and perspectives as two of the most ancient beings in Middle-earth. In a world filled with chaos and challenges, their wisdom could offer profound insight and guidance. But what do you think? Could there ever be a scenario where Gandalf might have a reason to confront Tom Bombadil? And if they did, who do you think would emerge victorious? Share your theories in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Middle-earth lore and explorations.